that states that it was Joe's fault that Kamala didn't go on his podcast. I don't think the 2020 election was stolen, but I think it was rigged.
How do you think it was rigged?
Because the Hunter Biden laptop story was real as fuck.
What happened on Joe's podcast? So he came out and said something about the Harris.
He came out this morning, or
interview.
The clip was released this morning. He basically exposed the Harris campaign as a liar, as though we didn't already know that. But so a book is coming out that states that it was Joe's fault that Kamala didn't go on his podcast. Joe basically came out and put the lie to that. The Harris campaign wanted to blame him for it not working out.
Why? Why do they want to?
Because they realized it was the biggest fuck up to not do the podcast. She should have been on your show. She should have been on Joe's podcast. She should have been everywhere instead of building $100,000 fake set for Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
I mean,
we invited her. We were talking to her people, and it could only be an hour. Then we had to discuss the topics first, and it just got to the point where I was like, look, why don't you just give me the outline and I'll do that interview, because I don't care what you give me. I'll make it work. And then you know what I think it was? I think it was the Brett Baer interview, which honestly, to be honest with you, I didn't even think it was that bad. I mean, there's a couple parts, but I thought she handled it okay. And but after that, it was dead silence. We had Newsweek put something out. We had the Washington Post put something out, and it just turned into crickets. But
I don't understand why it's so hard for her to answer simple questions. I don't understand why she has to do these endless word salads. Like, why is it so hard for you to be human? Just answer the question. You don't have to talk in endless circles. I just don't get it. And I know her. Like, when I talk to her, she's fine. But when she does these interviews, she becomes like a android. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Shawn, you're talking to me like a real full-blooded person. Why can't she just be that? We don't want to rehearse. We don't want to caricature as president. We want a human being that we can relate to.
Why do you think she can't? Do you think she's intimidated? Do you think?
There are several explanations. Some people say that she's just not that intelligent. It could be. Maybe she can't think on her feet. Maybe she relies on, talking points. But I had friends on her staff who tell me that she would get pissed at them for her own lack of preparation. Like, she would yell and she would get frustrated at them for her own inability to read the talking points and to internalize them. It's just, I don't know.
She definitely didn't seem quick on her feet, but I would still love to interview her. And I'm glad Joe, was able to set the record straight.
Yeah, and I'm here. I will give you as many names as you need in order to make the interview happen. Because I know her staff, and she will see requests. It's just a matter of her willingness, because she's so afraid to fuck up.
Yeah. What's she doing now?
She's deciding whether to run for governor in 2026 or try again for 2028. And I had someone, I kid you not, call me at 3:30 a.m. this morning.
Run for governor in California?
Yeah. Oh, she didn't call me, but I have a mega donor. She's a co-founder of two-factor authorization. She called me at 3:30 a.m. this morning saying the Democratic Party is in shambles. Yes, we already knew that, but coming from the horse's mouth, it was very important. And she was saying how nobody, there's not a single person of importance in the Democratic Party thinks that Kamala Harris should run again. But Kamala Harris is in her cloud of delusion. She still might run again in 2028 for president. So right now, the choice is whether to run for California governor in 2026 or president in 2028. And let me tell you something that the press doesn't know about. In order to run for governor in 2026, she would have to betray one of her closest friends, because the current lieutenant governor is a woman named Eleni. She has a long Greek last name. Please don't make me say it. But she's the current lieutenant governor of California under Gavin Newsom. She is running for governor now. She's the current front runner. She's very close with Kamala. In fact, her cousin, Kristen Bertolina Faust, was Kamala Harris's finance chair. So for Kamala Harris to run for governor, she would have to stab her friend in the back. And I know this is important because it's a question of integrity versus ambition. Is she going to put her friend first, or she's going to put her ambition first? And if I were to, I mean, I know Kamala, and I would say that she would probably put her ambition first. Friendship is collateral damage for her.
Man, well, she'd probably be a shoo-in out in California.
I don't know. I think honestly, after the fires, I think the fires were a game changer and showed even Democrats that the entire party is just a party of fuck. Like even liberals understand that now. There's been a complete mood shift across Hollywood, and I have donors across Hollywood, across finance. They are fed up.
Wow. All right. Well, let's move in. We've got a couple things to cover first. So I have a Patreon account. There are top supporters. A lot of them have been with us since the very beginning. I started this thing in my attic, believe it or not. Then we moved here. Now we're building a new studio, and it's all because of them. But so one of the things I do is I offer them the opportunity to ask each and every guest a question. And so this question is from Eric Alger. Lindy, you're a strong advocate for progressive policies and frequently appear in the mainstream media to push your message. Conservatives often argue that media landscape is overwhelmingly biased towards the left, silencing dissenting voices. Given your platform and reach, do you acknowledge that there is a media bias problem? And if not, how do you explain the censorship and suppression of conservative viewpoints on major platforms?
I totally agree. Well, there's one element of that question that I'm gonna have to politely disagree with. I don't think I've never been an outright progressive. I'm progressive on the environment, but that's pretty much it. I want clean air and clean water, and I want to remind everybody that this is a fundamentally Republican issue, originated with Richard M. Nixon. He started the EPA. All right, putting that aside, there is tremendous bias against conservatives across mainstream media, but I think the 2024 election was kind of, it's the moment when the crack just, the crack deepened and people realized that the facade was falling. The Democratic Party no longer, despite the entire array of the mainstream media, they still weren't able to perpetrate the lie that Biden wasn't in cognitive decline, that Kamala Harris wasn't a weak candidate. So finally, the scales are falling off of people's eyes, and they're realizing the mainstream media is in cahoots with the Democratic Party, and they're sick and tired of that. So I'm really glad that people like superstars like you, like Joe Rogan, and like so many, actually, you and Joe, just the two of you, and others in the podcast landscape, you guys are, putting the lie to the mainstream narrative. For example, the Hunter Biden laptop story. I'm here to be painfully honest, okay? I don't think the 2020 election was stolen, but I think it was rigged.
Mm-hmm. How do you think it was rigged?
Because the Hunter Biden laptop story was real as fuck. It was real. It wasn't Russian disinformation. The intelligence community lied, which is, I actually know Tulsi. I'll tell you why later, but she is right to question the conclusions of the intelligence community, because these are the same people who told us that the Hunter Biden laptop story was fake. And the vast majority of Democrats are still going to tell you that it's fake. It's not fake. Mm-hmm. Even the Washington Post did a deep analysis of the contents of the laptop, and the Washington Post substantiated the validity of the laptop. Okay. And so the big guy, that's true. The 10% to the big guy, that's true. They checked out the metadata. It's not Russian disinformation. And you have people like Anthony Blinken lying on behalf of his boss. That is not okay. So it may not have been stolen, but it was rigged, because that story should have gone out. The New York Post shouldn't have been censored. People on social media, people on Facebook and Twitter at that time, they should have been able to spread that story. And I am sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize. Okay. I'm sorry that I bought into it. I know Joe. Okay. And a part of me is still I'm sorry if you think I'm nuts, but a part of me still is going to love him for the rest of my life because of the kindness that he's shown to me. But also, he didn't have much faith in Kamala Harris. Before she ascended to the top role, he was vetting people like Mark Kelly and Andy Bashir.
So who was running it? Who are the names? A lot of people say it was Obama's third term. There's rumors of, and these are friends of mine that are moderate Democrats say that they thought it was Elizabeth Warren running it. They thought it was Bernie Sanders running it. But I think the general consensus, I think if you asked, the majority of the population, I think it was Obama's third term.
It was for sure Obama's third term. I don't think that's even a question. I don't think anyone it definitely was. And that's why you saw Obama fighting for his dear life. Why was he fighting so hard in the fall? Because he was fighting for his fourth term. He was fighting for his own legacy. The relationship between Obama and Biden is most reminiscent of that between LBJ and JFK. JFK had little respect for Lyndon B. Johnson, but he picked him anyway because he wanted to win the South. He wanted to win Texas. But he had very little respect for LBJ's intellect. JFK was surrounded by his Harvard brain trust, and he had immense disdain for LBJ's Texas Hill Country vibe. And that was the same attitude that Obama had towards Biden. Obama thought that Biden would eventually fuck everything up. And that's eventually actually what happened. So, but also he didn't have much faith in Kamala Harris. Before she ascended to the top role, he was vetting people like Mark Kelly and Andy Bashir. Most party chieftains didn't have Kamala Harris as their number one choice. But in the party of DEI, you can't skip a black woman. The optics would have been terrible.
So who was running it? Who are the names?
Steve Ricchetti, his senior advisor, Anita Dunn, Mike Donnellan, Ron Klain, Jeff Zients, Bob Bauer, his personal lawyer, who's actually his personal lawyer, who actually released a book basically grifting off his relationship with the Bidens. I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying all this. Please give me credit but these are the people who ran our country for the last 4 years.
So let's go through each name for all of the audience. Not everybody is as tuned in with who's who in the political world.
As a general overview, these are the people who made a living off of their connection with Biden. It's like they were leeching off the Biden name for decades, and all of them realized that they would never work for another president, so they had to ride the gravy train all the way through, like ride it to the very end. And that's why all of them refused to concede the truth, which is that Biden is unfit, and he would have been comatose by the time he was 86.
Who's the first name you mentioned?
Steve Ricchetti, the same guy who put his own kid at the Treasury.
Who is he? What's his position?
His most senior White House senior advisor. Like all of them are White House counselor or White House senior advisor. And they are the gatekeepers of the president.
Who's the next name?
Mike Donnellan, the same guy who's feeding, I'm just going to say it like it is, feeding Biden fake numbers telling him that he would win. He would beat Trump. Seriously, are you kidding me? And the truth of the matter is, by the time Biden was going to drop out, he was on track to lose the Electoral College by 400 votes. Trump was on track to get 400 Electoral College votes. Not a typo. I'm not misspeaking. 400 electoral votes by the time he dropped out. And Mike Donnellan, his pollster, whom they go back decades. By the way, the major qualification for all of these folks is that they know Biden really well. These aren't like PhDs or like rocket scientists or anything like that. It's just because of loyalty. And they've stayed with him for a number of years. So Mike Donnellan, Nancy Pelosi actually called him out. And she said, show me the numbers, Mike. Like, show me where you're getting these numbers that show that Biden can still beat Trump. And Donnellan wasn't able to deliver. No such numbers exist.
Who's the next name?
Who did I say? Anita Dunn. I actually have a soft spot for Anita Dunn because she got iced out of the Biden circle in August of this past year because she dared to say, maybe it's a good idea for the president to shy away from his convicted felon of a son because the optics aren't great.
Why do you have a soft spot for somebody who's running the country in the shadows to the ground?
Because she dared to speak up. She's the only one who did. She's the only one who dared to utter criticism.
But we went 4 years
I
with
know, but she's
with
the
this
only
shit.
one who did anything a little bit different, you know? And
I
she
mean,
got exiled. She got kicked out of the White House. So
when?
she's July. So
Who
she got
else?
booted out. And then not only her husband got booted out. Her husband, Bob Bauer, was Biden's personal attorney. So after Anita, oh, so I should also mention that after the debate, Hunter basically commandeered the White House. He sat in on all the White House top level meetings. You had a former cocaine addict sitting in on the most sensitive meetings of the most consequential and important government in world history. Does that sit right with you?
No.
Without security clearance, mind you, no security clearance. That's who was basically running the show. So Hunter basically battened down the hatches after the debate to make sure that his father would only receive intel that he pre-approved. And so Anita Dunn got exiled around this time along with her husband. Her husband was playing Trump in the debate prep. Ron Klain was disgraced after the debate blew up. And then Jeff Zients, the person who's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, the chief of staff, I should mention that the weekend that Biden made the decision to drop out, he only told two people in that circle, and that's that's Steve Ricchetti and Mike. He didn't tell Anita because I was on a call with Anita that morning and she had no idea it was going to happen. It completely caught her off guard. So by that time, they were already easing her out of the circle.
Is there any? Did we cover all the names?
Did we? Jill Biden?
Jill Biden.
She was like president. She was president. I was with Joe and Jill the night of the debate. I was at their VIP debate watch party. I slept all the way to Atlanta, Georgia for that to show my support. Oh my gosh, Shawn, you wouldn't believe it. So that night I have the pictures too. I was with Joe. And so Jill takes Joe by the hand. The names are so similar. I'm sorry. Jill takes Joe by the hand on stage and she's like, Joe, you knew all the facts. You answered all the questions. And you know that hand gesture that she does. And I'm thinking, you're treating him like a first grader. You know, like just because like you shouldn't applaud him for doing the basics. And you could just tell that she was fighting for dear life to hold on to the vestige of power. And just a few days later, she was on the cover of Vogue. So the whole thing was a Jill Biden show. She was not as authentic as Joe, I want to say. I think as Joe got older, maybe you think I'm naive in saying this, but I'm not even sure if he remembers all of the corruption that he engaged in.
It doesn't surprise me.
Like I don't think he had a full understanding what was going on. Niles, Beyonce was paid.
Who was she paid by?
Cardi B was paid. Okay? Cardi B, who famously said she wasn't paid, her production company was paid to show up. Katy Perry was paid. Christina Aguilera was paid. Oprah wasn't paid $1 million. She was paid $2 million. Okay? Let's be very clear.
$2 million.
$2 million to Harpo Productions.
Tell me about Beyonce.
Despite her repeated denials, Beyonce was paid.
Who was she paid by?
The Harris campaign. She was paid tens of thousands of dollars to not sing. Well, no, she refused to sing. She was paid tens of thousands of dollars to give a speech that no one wanted to hear. And Kamala Harris thought all of these people came out to Texas to hear her speak. Yeah, right. They came to hear Beyonce sing. And you know what? This is the second time they failed to deliver Beyonce. The first time was at the DNC. They promised that Beyonce would perform. Beyonce did not perform. So that was letdown number one. Letdown number two, they went to Texas to prop up this candidate who could never beat Ted Cruz, Colin Allred. And they told NBC News that Beyonce would perform. Beyonce came out and gave this speech, this boring ass speech, and just left without performing. And then Kamala Harris got booed. She got drowned in boos because people didn't really care what she had to say. They were there to hear Queen Bee. So that was number one. Beyonce was paid, show up. Cardi B was paid. Okay. Cardi B, who famously said she wasn't paid, her production company was paid to show up. Katy Perry was paid. Christina Aguilera was paid. These people were all paid. And Oprah wasn't paid $1 million. She was paid $2 million. Okay. Let's be very clear.
$2 million.
$2 million to Harpo Productions. Who owns Harpo Productions? Flip Harpo backwards. It spells out Oprah. It's Oprah's production company. It was paid $2 million to put on that town hall in which Meryl Streep calls her Madam President. It was a love fest for Kamala Harris. So Oprah was paid $2 million. And who else? Al Sharpton was paid $500,000 moments before he interviewed her. Okay. An MSNBC anchor, Al Sharpton, was paid money. A so-called journalist was paid money moments before he interviewed the vice president. People like Roland Martin, who are attacking me now, he was paid $350,000 to interview advertising costs, okay? Advertising costs, wink, wink, to interview Kamala Harris. The Pennsylvania Democratic Party was paid $25 million after the chair raised hell for not being paid enough street money. Street money is just a boondoggle. It's a cauldron of corruption. They just hand out money to ward leaders. And so this is how donor money was spent. Donor money was basically set on fire for 5-star hotels, luxury trips, private, charter planes, just this ridiculous stuff. And a lot of these donors are hardworking Americans. I had people giving anywhere from $10 to $15 all the way to $1 million. All of them worked hard for their money. And if they knew that their money was spent this way, they never would have given.
There's a lot of corruption coming out right now about USAID. Did they fund any of this campaign?
I don't think they funded any of the Harris campaign, but the Democrats are so pissed off and freaking out about USAID because Trump got it. He hit it on the nail. That's where the corruption is. And we need to look into what happened with that missing Ukraine money. All those billions that were supposed to go over there, and Zelensky said he never got it. What the hell happened to that money? Why are we funding transgender operas around the world? Why? Why are we funding DEI programs, not only here at home, but across the globe? Someone's got to answer for it. And you can tell that we hit the target by how angry they are.
Yeah. Man, I don't think what's it going to take for the Democratic Party to turn things around?
They have someone who wants to abolish the Second Amendment and ICE and who wants to defund the police running the party now. So I don't think they're going to be out of the woods for the next 10 years. I think it's going to be golden era for conservatives.
I think they're going to have to be honest with the American people and admit a lot of faults. And it's going to take somebody really tough to turn that around. But
I don't see anyone on the horizon, do you? And I went down the list. And I can tell you why all of the people they have. One last thing I'll say. Obama, at this point in 2004, 2008, everyone knew that Obama was going to run for president because he had given that famous DNC speech in 2004. Now, at this time in the cycle, there's no one of that stature, of that talent on the Democratic side. All right? They just have no one waiting in the wings of that caliber.
Yeah, it seems like all the moderates have switched. Before one other question. We were talking, I brought up Biden's doctors and how they said that
O'Connor.
What's his name?
Kevin O'Connor.
I've always wondered who it was. But, there's a lot of people that think that he was basically doped up before he would get on TV or get on and give a speech or whatever. Is there any truth to that?
I only want to tell you things that I've seen with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that he likely took something before the State of the Union.
I was wondering because I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was there for that. And he seemed sharp at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
it kind of went
Yeah.
downhill there towards the
And
end.
like clockwork, all the Democrats are praising him to the high heavens for simply reading off the teleprompter. That's not a high bar to jump over, okay?
Yeah.
Anyone who has a rudimentary understanding of English can read off a screen.
Yeah.
It didn't require any impromptu thinking on his part.
So any rumors of, I mean, you were in there. Were there any rumors of him getting doped up, Adderall?
Oh, there are plenty of rumors, but Shawn, I'm here to
Pro-visual.
give you the facts. Like everything I've said to you so far has been like proven, or I've seen it with my own two eyes. I've never seen him get doped up, but there were plenty of rumors that he would get doped up before every major event. Like for example, after the debate, he went to North Carolina. It was basically it was a life or death moment for his campaign. He had to prove that he was still ready to continue his race. The rumor was that he took something. The night after the debate, he basically self-destructed before the eyes of the whole world. So the next day, he had to prove that he could still keep going. And that's what we were told, that he got some sort of injection or whatever before he went on stage in North Carolina. But I wasn't there to see that, and I don't want to, I can't say for sure. But
So even within the Democratic crowd, they knew something was going on.
oh yeah, absolutely. Because it was night and day. His energy level, he would be like Pee Wee Herman in one moment and then just be like Mahatma Gandhi the next. Like it would just be night and day. His energy level, the delta between the two was just really significant. Yeah, it just, for example, the previous night, he was like, we finally beat Medicare. And the next day, he was like hollering on stage. It's like two different people.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.